Hello, this is Dale, and Mike's here too. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Dale, how's it going?
It's going okay. We talk just a little bit outside of your presence,
Oh, no, we
and
don't. We never, ever do that.
we're not like the commissioners who are doing it on a regular basis. Even one of the commissioners confessed that yes, they do that, and even Keith Hicks said, "I know we're breaking the law, and I don't care. It is the law." Anyway. Um, we talked a little bit about, we always talk a little bit about what we're going to bring up with
No,
you.
we do. No, we don't.
And I suggested that we talk a little bit about the Daily Courier and maybe a little bit about KJO today. Because,
Because we never do that.
if we had a real newspaper in this town, there wouldn't be any need for badcounty.com.
Yeah, that's right.
You'd just go like you do in any other town, and you would read the newspaper, and they would level with you, and they would tell you the good, the bad, the ugly, the happiness, the comics, the dog licks ice cream cone. They would tell you all of these things, but the Courier doesn't do that. So I wanted to give you just a little bit of history. Some of this may be new to Mike, but Mike's been keeping up with this pretty well during the last year or two. And so he'll have things to contribute as well. But there's some things that you might not know. And what's Dale so upset about the Courier for? Yeah, everybody knows it's not a very good newspaper, but that's the same way everywhere. Not really. I'll tell you how I got started with this. So when I first came into the community, I was interested in volunteering to do something with maybe PBS and television production, because that's the background I come from, television, radio, and newspaper. I thought maybe I'd volunteer to do something. And so I contacted the newspaper, for example, and after a while I started shooting videos for them of sports that was in the area, because who else was doing that? And then I would give it to them for free because they didn't have enough money. This is the Courier to do that. And then I stopped doing that after a while because they were insisting that I bring it to them earlier and earlier. Can you get it down here by 5:30? I kind of like, in the morning. Yeah, well, last night was a double header, and so can you still get it to us by 5:15? And I'm like, I stayed up all night long. I mean, I didn't get any sleep at all to edit this thing into the little bits and pieces so they could take it and act like they're reporting on it.
Right.
Okay, it's not all about me, but it would have been nice if they'd at least put something like they did for themselves. This was edited by this guy and that guy. Great, but not a single word about who brought the footage to you. It's not like I need that glory, but after staying up all night, I wasn't in the best of moods, and I look at that and I go, hey, they didn't even include my name.
Yeah.
I stopped doing it for them as a volunteer service. Well, I do care, and maybe if it was just high school kids, I might have continued doing it. Anyway,
Well,
go ahead.
no, listen, it's human nature to want to be rewarded in some way for something that we do, and whether that's monetary or you get some sort of kudos. But I mean, if you're going to work 4 or 5 hours on something, then you want to get some recognition. That's totally logical.
Well, with me, it linked together. I did some volunteer work. Well, I got paid a very slight bit of money to be a substitute teacher at the high school. I've told you about that before. And one of the things that came up is it was getting pretty popular. I mean, we were doing the football games, every one of them with commentary and with graphics, and the basketball games had the scores they'd never done before. You actually knew who you were playing and what the score was. Well, what an innovation. So that's at modern television. And at one point, we were actually pulling in students from other high schools that wanted to help. This was cool, and they weren't getting class credit for it from their high schools, but they just loved working on it. And the principal came to me and says, "We've got to cut out these credits at the end." Well, it was like taking 30 seconds maximum, and he says, "Well, they don't really need credits." So
what was the rationale for that, if you don't mind me asking?
I just don't know. I asked him, why would we not want to give credit to the high school students that have volunteered their time for this? We just don't need it. And I'm going, but why? We just don't need it. So the students came to me. They came to their teachers.
Who's it hurting?
Right, exactly. Maybe, maybe it was because there were students from other high schools and the principal didn't want to admit that students from other high schools were volunteering. I don't understand.
Does
That
he
was,
know who they are? I mean,
yeah, well,
I
yeah,
can't
their
even
names were
imagine.
put up. Yes, of course, right. But
Yeah.
that was Aaron Anderson. Okay, he's not with us anymore. Whatever happened to him, I don't know. But the students came to me and they said, Mr. Matthews, you're not really going to do that, are you? And I said, no. I said, before I do that, we'll just pull the plug altogether because you're going to get credit. And they were so grateful. Well, they graduated sooner or later, within a year or so probably, and they went off into life thinking that they may get credit for something good that they do. But they weren't learning that year at Grants Pass High School. What a shame.
Yeah, it's
Okay, so
unfortunate.
that kind of affected me with this thing about staying up all night. Maybe I was just grouchy from staying up all night to help the courier just because I thought it was a nice community thing to do. Okay, so moving on a little bit here. Not quick enough, I know. Um, they did we had been complaining, Sandy Casanelli and me especially, had been complaining to the county commissioners that the people who used to run the television thing at the Ann Basker were selling commercials on our county channel, which is supposed to be non-commercial, and pocketing the money and doing and I told you about this before, that they bought some equipment with the county's money and decided to keep the equipment instead of turning it over to the county. It was that's thievery.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they had appointed a blue ribbon panel because they'd been getting hit from a number of directions, not from me. I was just talking about this one tiny, well, that's so small. Well, then it's easy to clean up, right? So just from this one thing from me and from Sandy Casanelli. And so they appointed a blue ribbon panel to look into funding about the sheriff. Was that being spent correctly? And to this thing and some other stuff as well. I think the fair might have been part of it. There was a number of things. And for some reason, they picked this thing with RVTV, Rogue Valley Television, to go first. They're still doing the TV services for Grants Pass City. They picked it first. Okay. Well, I figured, I think most of us did, they picked their buddies to be on this blue ribbon panel. Who else would they pick, right? They're not going to pick somebody that has a complaint. They're going to pick, they certainly wouldn't talk with me or with anybody that had the numbers. They just picked their regular pals mostly out of the Rotary Club to go take a look at this. So we figured, it's going to be another whitewash. Actually, that panel came back and said, you know what? The county's been blowing this. Really? Yeah, and we suggest that the state police look into Rogue Valley Television, hello, City of Grants Pass, and investigate them for fraud.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, wow. What an amazing. And the commissioners really weren't happy with this from their pals, because think how far this had to go even for their pals to say there's a problem. Oh, they found no problems anywhere else, but they did find it with this. Really? And they didn't even talk with us. And they still found this.
Well, you
Oh.
know what? Listen, I could see if you're on a panel or something like that and you start digging in and you find out there really is some dirty stuff here. And wait a minute, if we come back and say what these people want us to say and the truth ever about this ever gets out, guess who they're going to come back and say is really dirty? Well,
Oh,
that'd be
yeah.
us.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
So the report came back, and I did something I had never done before. I asked a government, my local government, if I could have a copy of the report. They acted then the same way they do now. Why, that's intimidating that you're asking for a copy. Really? Really? I mean, you paid for it. I mean, you asked these guys to look. They looked into it. It totally vindicates our position. I'd like to see a copy of it. Oh, okay. I wasn't a thorn in their side at that point. I was nobody. Okay. So I got a copy of it, and I said, by the way, are you going to let anybody know about this? Well, no, I really don't see any reason why we need to, make a big deal of it. Oh, really? So I did something, might seem in character for me now, but I'd never done anything like this ever before. It's only since I
Mm,
had moved here. And
sure.
No, I really hadn't. So the only time I came close was when they told me in my government job, because I used to work for Uncle Sam. I was one of the guys trying to get good information out about our country to countries that are at odds with us, and a lot of them still are at odds with us. Apparently, I didn't do the job good enough. But
Yes.
what I did was
You're the one.
I made sure that there was actual news and not fake news. And responsible for taking a couple of the stories and spiking them, which means you just take the whole story and you put it on a spike and you say we're not going to run this. At
Yeah.
least I had control over it because it was propaganda, and I was more interested in actual news, the pluses and the minuses. It's what the BBC does to British Broadcasting Corporation to get
Now,
credit.
when you do that though, you have to make sure.
Move your hand out
Don't.
of the
Yeah, yeah. Don't do it. Yes, yes.
way. Don't do this kind of thing on
Because
top
the
of the spike.
spike will stick to your hand.
Right.
I mean, go figure.
Well, there were a couple of my bosses who felt like I had put my hand on it, but we weren't going to run the fake news. Okay, not even the federal government. We weren't doing that today. As Cheryl Walker said once, we're not putting cameras on the backs of chairs today. Well, we weren't running
Today.
fake news stories today. So yeah, and I told them I couldn't falsify the records, and I wasn't working there much longer. So anyway, yes, I had done a little something, but what I did was I took a copy of that down to Staples, good place to do copies, and I had 500 copies made up.
Jeez.
So I went out to Sixth and G on First Friday, and just stood there. I'd never even been there really, and I'm got these things under my arm, and I'm handing them out to people. Would you like to see? What am I going to say? You got to say it to people quickly. I said, would you like to see the report that the county government would rather that you not read? Yeah. Would you like to see the report that the yeah? And so they were all gone within, as I recall it, within about an hour. All of them were gone.
Wow.
So I thought, maybe in this town and I got a little happiness out of it because they really would prefer you didn't know about this thing where it was being stolen from us. And when I went to county legal counsel at the time, he said, well, we still got a pretty good deal. Are you kidding me? They literally stole this from us. And you're saying, and you're going to continue the contract with them? Yes, that's where we live. I didn't know that. So I went to the Courier with it because tonight's about Joe and Courier. I went to the Courier with the report. Not only were they not going to run this report or any allusion to it, they didn't even want to look at it. Really? I mean, this says in any town in America, you've heard me say this before, if a vendor is literally stealing from you, and I don't mind saying this, Rogue Valley Television, run at the time by Pete Bell Castro. I'm not saying he put money in his pocket, but I am saying because they admitted to it. Look, I can't be sued by this because it's the truth. Well, that's not very nice. Yeah, but it's the truth, and the city still has a contract with them.
Yeah, which is worse, the stealing of the equipment or the mentioning that they did it?
You know how some people would answer that.
Yes, I know. I
So
know.
so so I of course I went to the newspaper. A newspaper, right? Wanting to keep people informed. Not only did they not want to inform you, they didn't want to inform themselves. They just totally weren't interested. Really? What kind of newspaper is this? Started me thinking.
They have,
Yeah.
Liz, there's a policy somewhere. There obviously is a written. It's probably in behind glass on a wall. Do not write stories critical of local government. I mean, it has to be something along those lines. It just
Well,
has
now,
to.
now, it really, come on, you guys, you professional complainers. We get paid nothing, so we're not professionals. We're amateur complainers. Well, you always say that, but well, Mark Seligman, not everybody's favorite guy. I'm not either. Mike is. So Mark Seligman finally convinces the Courier to let him write. So is it still happening? So he goes to the new editor, who's Kevin Wittison now, and not Dennis Roller, and he says, well, I'd like to do an opinion piece. And this is different than a letter to the editor. I'd like to do an opinion piece. And Kevin Wittison says, okay. but you just can't criticize county government. Really?
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. It's a policy, clearly.
That's the did you know that's a policy of the Daily Courier, you
No,
guys?
no, I had no idea.
So I back going back to Dennis Roller when he was the editor of the Courier, I'd written a letter saying that RVTV, because this was my thing, right? All I wanted is I wanted an open channel for. We were supposed to get public access, never got that. Educational access, never got that either. And government access. Well, government access coming out of our ears, but only a couple of hours a week. Really? And what were they doing the rest of the time? Running commercials or infomercials, which is, it looks like information, but it's really a commercial.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah. Thank you for explaining that. I was
well,
not
you're an
making the
educated guy,
connection.
and our entire audience is educated too, but there might be someone tuning in by accident that
Who
doesn't know what
doesn't
an
know what an
infomercial is.
infomercial is? Okay.
Yeah, because they don't have television or the internet, and I don't know how they're watching the show. So,
Right.
um,
Yes.
so I wrote a letter to the editor. This is writing a letter to the editor, in case you.
Yes.
I'm right, and this is typing. Oh, down here. This is typing. We've gone through this before. This is also playing music, but don't get me started. Okay, so I wrote a letter to the editor saying RVTV is running infomercials on our public access channel and pocketing the money. Well, Dennis Roller changed. Did you know they do this? He rewrote my letter to the editor. They do that? Yes, they do. And he changed it to RVTV as running programs on our channel. Well, yeah, I'm really stupid. You're complaining about that? They're
How dare
supposed to,
they
aren't
do
they?
that?
What
How
a
dare
horrible
they do
thing!
that?
I'm
That's just
accusing them of
wrong.
running programs. Oh no!
I wanted a test pattern.
Uh, so, yes, they changed the letter to the editor. They can do that. Well, it
Wow.
doesn't say that we're not going to. Yeah, but who knows this? I mean, why would you want to? What kind of newspaper would want to rewrite anybody's letter to the editor? What kind of
Not to
newspaper
mention
is
that
this?
it's fraudulent. You're claiming that this letter is from Joe Blow. Well, that's not the letter that Joe Blow sent you.
It has my name on it.
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying. No, I
Okay.
mean that is wrong. For them to edit that, especially, I mean, they could call you up on the phone and say, "Hey, do you mind if I change this to that?"
There you go. Or if
Now
I'd
that's
put in
different.
bad words or something, they might,
Right.
take them
Right.
out. Okay, I don't do that. You guys know me. I don't do that. Okay, but they were changing the entire purpose of the letter.
Right. Yeah, because now it's a letter about nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It makes me look really, really stupid, and I don't need any help. So one other thing happened associated with the television stuff is that I started to volunteering for my county government, because at the beginning, one would only hope you don't just light in to these guys, you try to work with them. You go and you talk with them beforehand. I remember talking with Don Reedy before he was appointed to replace Sandy Casanelli. And Don Reedy had told everybody in public testimony, I'd videotaped it also, that if he was appointed, that he was going to be mainly a transparency guy. It was all going to be about transparency, about being beholden to the public, about being a public servant, about being transparent. And I met with him and Jim Williams. We must have talked for an hour at Wendy's, and he said all of the right things. So, you check it out and you try to be sure, not like anyone would listen to me and, okay, I'm agreeing. They were going to pick anybody they wanted to, but I listened to him very carefully. Now, you might think that after a while that all these things are connected, so just be patient. Like I say, it's a free show. You might think that after a while somebody could come into local government and change. On day 2, he changed. This is not enough time. It's not enough time for the system to change you. On day
Right.
2, Don Reedy said, when I asked him a question, you've heard me say this before, I was just asking a question of what's the county government going to be up to next? What are the commissioners going to do next? Okay, friendly question. He said, it's none of your business what we do as county commissioners. End of subject.
Right.
That's transparency?
Well, it's pretty clear if that happened after 2 days. It's pretty clear on which end of that spectrum the disingenuous
How
behavior
about
was
the
taking
word
place.
liar?
Okay.
Okay, disingenuous. Yes, yes,
Yes.
he's
Oh, no, no, no,
disingenuous.
no. He misspoke.
Oh,
He
jeez.
misspoke first.
Yeah, he
No,
did. He
listen.
misspoke when he said he was interested in transparency. Don Reedy, watch this show. You did not tell us the truth.
And just a quick side note, because I can't keep my mouth shut. One of
Oh,
my
what he said.
biggest problems One of my biggest problems is when I first heard George Bush say, "And we're going to bring him to justice." I didn't want to hear him say, "And we're going to bring him to justice." I wanted to hear him say they're going to kill the guy, the bleepity bleepity bleep bleep.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's what I wanted to hear.
They're
So
not Islamic terrorists. They're Walmart savers. Come on.
anyway, I'm sorry. I'm
Oh, no,
sorry
no,
I
no. Don't be
interjected
sorry.
into your.
No, no. Just put it back on mute, please. So, I'm kidding him. So, when Jim Riddle was a commissioner, this is one of my favorite stories to tell because it implicates so many people. When Jim Riddle was a commissioner, this guy was a real piece of work. And you may say, well, I like that Jim Riddle. We've had this discussion already. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something you might not like about Jim Riddle. So Jim Riddle's on KJO with Carl Wilson, and for some reason the other two commissioners weren't there. It was just the two of them talking, and it was people could call in. Sandy Casanelli called in. Now, pluses, minuses, whatever you think about Sandy Casanelli, she knows her stuff. And she called in, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was something like she was asking Jim Riddle about the PEG fund, about RVTV. This was our thing. That was all that we were doing at the moment. It's a small thing. Can we clean up this very small little thing? And she says, well, so tell me what happened to the $1,832.17. And there's this long pause on the other end with the two of them. This is Carl Wilson, who's now your new state representative. Maybe you voted for this guy. I didn't, and I'll tell you why. And Jim Riddle. Jim Riddle was a commissioner. And they kind of wait, and then you hear them burst out in laughter. Why would you be laughing when she's asking you what happened to that money? Because it was associated with things having to do with the equipment. And Carl Wilson laughs and laughs, and he says to Jim Riddle, so what's your answer to that, Jim? And Jim is like, oh, man. They cut Sandy off, of course, so she couldn't respond. I have talked so many times to Sandy Casanelli about this. He had never talked with Sandy Casanelli about this, and to my recollection, not ever. And I told her already that I have the answer to that. It's on the top of my desk at the courthouse. I have her answer, but she won't come by and get the answer. And Carl Wilson says,
Sure.
now keep in mind that you're listening to this, and maybe you trust Carl Wilson. He's supposed to be a journalist also, right? KJO, news talk show. And so he says, so let me see if I got this straight. This is when you really know. Let me clarify. Whenever the commissioners say, let me clarify, get ready, okay? Yeah. He says, well, let me see if I've got this straight. You have everything that she's ever asked for. That's correct. And you've got it on your desk just waiting for her. That's correct. And she won't come by and even get it. She won't. And they both burst into laughter again. This is your Carl Wilson, state representative now. Well, this is awful. I'm listening to it, and the calls are now over, and so there's not even time to call in. So I get this distraught call from Sandy Casanelli, no kidding, the next day. And she says, you're not going to believe this. She says, as soon as that show was over, I called up Jim Riddle's office. He wasn't there because he was still at the radio station. Okay, all right. And I left him a message saying, great, you've got the answers. I want to come right down and see them. because I've been trying for a long time, blah, 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 blah. You know, what a normal person would say instead of
Sure.
just laying it there. She is telling him, giving her a piece of her mind. Not that she can afford to spare that. Ha ha. Okay, so she gets back a call on, it's recorded. If you're a commissioner and you're going to be a liar, don't ever let anybody record you. And he recorded an answer on her answering machine. And it said, Sandy, haha, you and I both know that I don't have that stuff on my desk. No, but if you want to come by to my office, if you want to come by my office and you tell me the information, then I'll take notes. So
All
the first
right.
thing that I did once I heard that, as I said, you've saved that recording, right? Yes, I did. I called Carl Wilson. Carl, this is Dale Matthews. He didn't really know me. And I told him the story. And I said, I think you're going to want to listen to this recording. No, I don't want to listen to that recording. You're not even a little bit intrigued? This guy and you made fun of a citizen who was accurate. You provided airtime for him to denigrate a citizen, to say bad things about a citizen. She looked like an idiot based on this guy being on your show. I'm not saying that you called her an idiot, but you did laugh. Could you at least listen to the recording? No, I'm not interested. And I said, Carl, you at least owe a chance for Sandy to come on at some point and explain her point of view. No, we're not going to be doing that. And I said, Carl, you've just given time to Jim Riddle to say these things about her, and it's completely false, and she can show you. Don't talk to me, talk with her. She can show you that it's completely false. I know you're running a radio station. You want people to be informed. What about this? Absolutely, totally out of the question.
So basically, if I get elected commissioner, I can come over there and say anything I want to, and they'll cover my rear end on it.
You know, as Sandy put it, she's so funny. She says, I don't think they give a rat's rear end about the public. That's the way
Well,
she talks. She never.
yeah, and actually, I guess I couldn't get elected, and you have to be a special kind of person that got elected because it didn't work for Sandy.
Well, this fits in with that too, because you may recall we've talked about this before. She was running against Harry Mackin. Harry Mackin. And when Harry was defeated by Sandy Casanelli, there were a lot of people who went, what? And the Courier ran a big grinning picture of Harry Mackin on the front page. This candidate lost. Where was her picture? She won. They run a nice article about Harry Mackin and what a great guy he is, and he lost.
Yeah,
That's the Daily Courier. I
that's
didn't know
bizarre.
that. So I called Dennis Roller, and I said, this is what happened with Jim Riddle. And Dennis didn't want to listen to they didn't even want to listen to the recording. You're not even curious.
And so, if you don't mind my ignorance, who's Dennis Roller?
Oh, I'm sorry. He was the editor of the Daily Courier.
Oh, at the time,
And
okay.
and his assistant was Kevin Whittison, who's now
Who's
the new
now?
editor,
Right,
who
gotcha.
said, you know, you can write an opinion piece, but you can't say anything negative about our local
Yeah,
government.
right.
You can say something negative about President Obama, just not
No,
about our local
you
government.
know what? And that is just that.
What
It's
kind of
just
newspaper is this?
that ought to rub everybody the wrong way. If you have a subscription to that rag, you should cancel it. Just knowing that. I mean, what are you getting from the Courier? If they're giving you bad information on one story, how can you trust any story that they write to have the right information in it? And
Well, I
you know,
volunteered. I volunteered to work with government because I thought, okay, you know, maybe I'm just taking the wrong path on this. I can't just complain about them. I need to get together with them and form a team. Everything is awesome and everything's cool when you're part of a team. So I thought, well,
right?
I'll
I
join with them.
heard that somewhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it was on the Oscars this evening, and so
Yes.
I volunteered to come on down there, and I had to come down every night at midnight, every night, 7 days a week at midnight, and was doing this whole thing for free. And to show you what lunkheads they are, I'm sorry, I just got to say this. They had
Well,
me in the
well,
back
wait a
room.
minute. You got to explain, yeah, what it is you were doing.
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
me in the back room directing the show, punching the buttons, this camera, this camera, this camera, this camera. Okay, and I was punching the buttons back there during every weekly business session. Now, just think about this for a second. You're a county
Yes.
commissioner. Dale Matthews comes up and he criticizes you for things that you said, and he insists on telling people what you actually said, and he tries to read from a transcript from last week's meeting. And you guys say, "I'm not going to allow you to read from a transcript from last week." Really? It doesn't even say it. It just is your word. No, I'm not going to. So here they had me in the back room, and I'm totally busy during the weekly business session. I'm really busy. They had me
Yeah.
back there. Then they decided they didn't want me to volunteer to do that anymore. I was doing it right. There was never mistakes. We never had bad audio. We never had bad video like they do now. They had me locked up backstage. Instead, they say, no, we're not going to allow that. Was that a dumb decision? I mean, now I'm
Yeah,
upset.
that was the stupidest thing they ever did. You know, because now we have badcounty.com and 800 videos of their every stumble, and you know they could have sidestepped that whole process by keeping you in the dungeon back there flipping switches.
And I volunteered to do it. It
Yeah.
was all free. And they decided they'd rather spend money and have it done wrong. I'm sorry, but sometimes it's wrong. They'd rather spend money and have it
Sometimes,
done wrong.
sometimes, listen, every week it's messed up. It really is not good. They haven't done it right, I don't think, maybe once in the last couple of months.
So the key ingredient from the Courier side was that they wrote an editorial about me. This is nice. And then there is said, we think you ought to pull the plug on all of the videos. Really? One medium is saying, let's pull the plug on another medium? No. Okay, we'll talk about why in just a minute. But they said on the editorial that the worst part of all is that Dale Matthews is charging us all this money. No, I wasn't. And it has in the editorial, it's saying bad things about me, and I'm charging the county all this money. I was totally a volunteer. They were saving thousands and thousands of dollars every month.
Yeah.
And I called up Dennis Roller and I said, why would you write that? He said, well, we got that information. I said, where did you get that information? From RVTV.
Yes.
What?
Nice.
Really? Dennis, as a newspaper guy, just as a curious person in this world of ours, would you have considered, oh, I don't know, calling me and asking me any questions at all? Anything? Well, they had their thing already written.
Well,
Really?
yeah, but wait a minute.
Yeah?
There has to be a logic disconnect. Okay, I'm writing this story, and my source is RVTV. Okay, RVTV. This is an entity that
The
is
people that
not the
stole from us.
right. Yeah, but they're not the company that's paying Dale Matthews. So, and they're telling me he's charging them thousands of dollars. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'll
Charging
write
the
that down.
county thousands of dollars.
Right, charging the county thousands of dollars, and then hey, wait a minute. Maybe I should like verify that with the county,
How
or
about two sources? Two
or or,
sources
or
for
Dale
the
Matthews,
story.
or both.
Right.
Yes, I
Not
mean,
necessary.
yeah, it isn't necessary because there's some sort of agenda or just stupidity.
Well, how many of these stories do we need to tell you? Well, we don't have unlimited time. It's because it's your fault that we don't have unlimited
We
time.
actually do have unlimited time, but I'm assuming they don't have unlimited time.
No, they probably don't want to keep watching this. But look,
Yes.
at what point do you say, it's kind of enough for me? I don't. You already heard ad nauseum, and I mean nausea as well, about how they absolutely refuse to run this story about the $100,000 plus cost overrun. In any town in America, that would be at least a story. At least they could say there's a controversy, but it's all been answered. That's false, but they could
Mhm.
say that. They didn't even say that. They didn't even indicate that there's a controversy. You're going to hear absolutely nothing about the $100,000 plus cost overrun if you read the Courier, because they're not even going to admit that there's a question.
Right.
Okay, so here's another one. I got to be sure to get this in before we run out of time. Oh man, this one went by pretty quickly. So I started a little newspaper called First Friday. I was inspired not by trying to get people, oh, look, here's First Friday. That means that no, it doesn't mean anything except it would come out on the first Friday of every month, and I would distribute it at 6th and G during First Friday. That's the only reason. Okay, so it was absolutely free. And all it really was transcripts, just plain old transcripts, where I got in trouble with Dwight Ellis. Just plain old transcripts of what the commissioners were saying. A little bit boring, except for a cartoon version of my cat, Jack, who would always have something wry to say. And my two favorite comments about First Friday newspaper, and this is an outgrowth of that, was the one lady who came up to me and she said, I really liked a commentary by your cat, Jack. And I said, thank you. Why don't you write more like him? Okay. I just didn't have the heart to tell
Yeah.
her my cat didn't actually write this. I did, but okay.
Yes.
And the other one was the lady that came up to me.
Really?
This is yeah. Oh, and the other one is the lady that came up to me and she said, "Where'd you get permission to print this?" Um, I'm an American. She wanted to know what state agency gave me permission to print a newspaper. Really? So I
Yeah.
thought, well, if I can get the information like what we're trying to do with this, please tell somebody that you saw this show. Please. Okay. So, or come and Mike's always trying to get me to do this. You know that we're available also on Facebook and Twitter. You could come to Facebook or Twitter. Did I mention Facebook and Twitter? You could go to those, but
Yes.
there's no cost. We're doing
Yeah.
this because we're trying to be good citizens. Okay. We get paid nothing to do any, and in fact, exactly the opposite. So I went to Safeway headquarters for the entire West Coast. And I said, I've got this little thing, and they asked to see a couple of copies of it because, you really never know. Is this going to be like news reviews or is this, going to be factual? And so, oh, you'll like that.
Yeah.
and so I gave them copies, and they said, oh, well, okay. And so here was the deal. Maybe you don't know about this. They were putting First Friday newspaper in every bag. So when people came into Safeway, and you sometimes say, I can't afford this, but you sometimes see people walk out with 5 bags, 5 copies of First Friday. Every single bag, it's free. Every single bag, they were putting First Friday in there. Well, it was costing me a fortune. And where do I get the money? Because I'm on a fixed income, like many of you. Um, and I was having to print out 5,000 copies, 6,000 copies, and bring them by there every couple of days. And one day I went by there and I thought, I was just here earlier today, but where are all the copies? Oh, the courier came and took them. What's that? Well, the guy from the courier came and took them. The courier came and took them? They're free. What did the courier do with them? Well, I think he threw them away. What? The courier, under Dennis Roller. So I called and talked with the guy that's in charge of their circulation, or whatever. I don't know exactly what his name is. It's been a while. And I said, what's going on with my newspapers? He said, well, you're competing with us. I said, it's free. You have a day. They were daily back then. They were the Daily Courier. They're the not so Daily Courier now. And I said, but it's free. Yeah, well, we don't need that kind of competition, buddy.
What? Well, wait a minute. Yeah, who the hell are they? For
This is the
crying out! Oh,
Courier.
does that mean you can steal their newspaper because they're competing with you? No, because then it would be theft, right? I think that if somebody is stealing your paper for the purpose of depriving others from seeing it, that too is theft.
No commercials, no advertisements, nothing like that in the newspaper. It was just a competing set of ideas. And this competing set
Mhm.
of ideas was straight from the mouths of the commissioners with, and here's the point, no filter. It didn't have the Courier's Jim Moore rewriting the story to say something which is not truthful. We just recently pointed this out, as you know, and changing the story to read something else. The guy had said to the commissioners, not that I will contact companies, I will target contacting, I will try to contact companies. Okay. Jim Moore changed it, he will actually contact companies. This is not true. It's not even an interpretation of the truth. It's false. And this is what the courier needs to do, because if you found, I mean, what other solution is there to this? If you find out what's actually happening, I know this seems like, oh, Dale, you've gone too far in saying this. What else could be their motivation? We cannot allow any kind of competition to tell you what the commissioners, it's not even my opinions. It was my cat, Jack, but you know, he wrote that. The thing is that
Yes.
if this is straight from the mouths of the commissioners, this is why it's a waste of time to put it. This is why this plug should be pulled. This is why we shouldn't like Dale Matthews to charge us all this money when he didn't. This is why we need to steal their newspapers. You think I'm making this up? I'm not. If you're under the illusion that you're actually getting news from the Daily Courier, maybe now this creates a question, and I would suggest a solution to this. Mike has one of them, which is stop your dang subscription to the Daily Courier. I've got one that's just a little bit stronger than that. Stop buying anything from their advertisers.